Merci et bonjour. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be with you all and to introduce our next conversation. Today, we have the distinct honour of having with us J.P. Pritzker, the Governor of Illinois, a leader in the transition to a low-carbon economy. Since taking office in 2019, the Governor has accomplished an incredibly ambitious and consequential policy agenda for the state, which includes the Rebuild Illinois program, which represents the largest investment in state history in upgrading roads, bridges, broadband, and schools. Also, the rebuilding of Illinois' fiscal management, with the Governor proposing and passing a balanced budget every year, eliminating a multi-billion-dollar backlog in the process, reducing the pension liability, and achieving 6 credit upgrades from rating agencies. And also, the tackling of important social issues like raising the minimum wage, making post-secondary school more affordable, and advancing equal pay for women. And if that wasn't enough, in 2021, Governor Pritzker proposed and passed a comprehensive clean energy bill that positions Illinois as a national leader on climate action. So good to see you today, and good to see you yesterday in Ontario, Governor, signing an MOU with Premier Doug Ford, and to see you here today to also build the relationships in Quebec and further afield. As we all engage more practically in the transition to a low-carbon economy, Governor Pritzker has proven it is possible to achieve this level of impact by being bold in leadership and steadfast in dedication. In preparing for this introduction, I couldn't help but reflect in my own time in aviation. Spanning over 4 decades, I am regularly struck by the profound changes this industry has undergone. I actually began my career in 1978 as a ramp agent loading baggage at Prestwick Airport. My first day at work was spent racing to change 456 pillowcases on a Wardair Canada 747 in less than 3 hours. The aviation industry was very different in those days. Back then, we used to say we loved the smell of Jet A1 fuel. My personal favourite aircraft was the Boeing 707. Aircraft were noisier, less efficient, and the environmental impacts were not a primary concern. Funnily enough, at Toronto, Billy Bishop Airport, where I am now, the governing agreement that we have today was written around that time, pre-internet. And now that governing agreement needs modernising so we can all move together with technological advancement and the times. The pace of advancements in cleaner, quieter technology are a testament to relentless innovation and dedication. Many of the new and next generation aircraft advancements come from right here in Quebec and more broadly in Canada in our aerospace clusters. They highlight how far we've come and the potential we have to go further. Ev, you're doing a remarkable job in highlighting Quebec know-how around the world through your role at Bombardier in showcasing Bombardier's unparalleled products and international activities. Bombardier's sustainable aviation fuel strategy is an essential part of Bombardier's decarbonisation efforts and a pillar of the company's well-renowned ESG strategy. But nothing is done in isolation. Bringing us back to the topic of the fireside chat, the transition to a low-carbon economy is not something that can be achieved alone. It requires partnerships, and we all know that the best partnerships are rooted in aligned goals and priorities. They enable us to pool resources, share knowledge, drive innovation, and create synergies. At Billy Bishop Airport in Toronto, where Nieuport Aviation is the terminal owner and operator, we provide important linkages between Chicago, Ontario, and Quebec. More than just a transportation hub, Our city airport is a gateway linking important economic and cultural centres, whether it's the economic capitals of Toronto and Montreal and Chicago, or reaching northern communities central to natural resources which are critical for the transition to a low-carbon economy. We understand the importance of providing quick, convenient and easy connections. We are the number 5 border crossing in terms of passenger numbers between Canada and the US. We have for example, the Collision Conference, the Olympics of Tech soon upon us, and we know that will be very important for the people from Chicago coming into Toronto, from gate to gate without the wait. And as we prepare in our US pre-clearance operations opening in 2025, we know this will open up more destinations. We're hyper-focused on providing the same seamless and efficient process for travellers moving between Canada and the United States, strengthening ties and economic collaboration. And let's not forget, this is a connecting project linking Chicago with Toronto in time for FIFA 26. The first game is in 2 years today. Obviously, I'm Scottish. We're excited about the Euros next week, but 2 years is not a long time. And we've got 6 games in Toronto, 6 games in Chicago, so we can see a lot of people going back and forth. And for our passengers, it'll be from gate to game in 15 minutes. Looking ahead, armed with our new governing agreement, Billy Bishop Airport is set to become hybrid and eventually fully electric and hydrogen-powered planes. It's a vision of the future that my younger self, standing on the tarmac in 1978, could never have imagined as I loaded flights for Canada. Excited about transformative journey we are collectively embarking on, Governor. Your leadership and insights are invaluable as we navigate this transition. Together, through innovation, partnership, and our shared commitment to sustainability, we will create a cleaner, greener future for aviation and beyond. And with that, I'm pleased to hand over to Eve Laurier, Vice President, Communications, Marketing and Public Affairs, Bombardier, a driving force in sustainable aviation for this interesting and no doubt insightful discussion. Eve.
Merci beaucoup. Hello, Governor.
Thank you. Good to see you.
What a beautiful introduction. Nice to see everybody. Bonjour. So, funny story, Governor. I have an 11-year-old son. His name is Edward. And I don't know if you know, but it's the final exams right now. So he's in his 5th grade. So 2 weeks ago, I was invited to Chicago to give a conference. And I said yes, because it was Chicago. And everybody loves Chicago. And then Friday, I realized that my son is not going to get great grades if I don't stick around. So I canceled my conference in Chicago. But then Chicago came to me. Isn't that amazing?
Well, your son called me and told, no.
And so you are here because so many people wanted you here, and I want to acknowledge the presence of 2 people that I really value here. So Madeleine Féquière, bonjour Madeleine. Madeleine is la Consul Générale du Canada à Chicago. So she is a great spokesperson for you and for Illinois. Et Jean-François Houde, délégué du Québec à Chicago. Bonjour Jean-François. Merci beaucoup. Thank you for giving us the governor. And Governor, I had to get ready for this interview. So Bombardier has a Washington office, and we have lobbyists there and a big office. And I called them, and when I mentioned your name, they said so many things about you that made you sound like a Quebecer. You're funny, you're engaging, you're purposeful, you're purpose-driven, you're equality-driven, and you love sports. And you're going to tell us all about what we care about at Bombardier, but Quebec being Hydro-Quebec and a very sustainable province, we're going to talk about the importance of sustainability and what it is concretely as a governor that you're doing for that. So let's get started.
And I get to exercise my 6th grade French.
Allez-y.
Whatever I can remember from 6th grade.
No pressure, but if you want to speak French, we can do it. So let's talk about, first of all, what it is that we trade. Reading on this interview with you, I found out that Illinois is the #1 trading partner for Canada and vice versa. So let's talk about what it is that we trade with Illinois.
Well, let me begin by saying, first of all, merci beaucoup, and mes amis,
Bravo.
bonjour. And now that's half of what I learned in 6th grade. Let me say that we have more than 120 companies that are Canadian that are in Illinois, have presence in Illinois, and employ tens of thousands of people across our state. So, we're grateful to have that relationship. And as you know, many companies that are based in Illinois, including companies like AbbVie and Abbott Labs and McDonald's and United and Hyatt and others that do business across border and here in Montreal and in Quebec. So there's a lot going on cross border. But in terms of goods, very importantly, we have a supply chain that is connected from, well, really your major cities and even other provinces to all across the state of Illinois. Many of you may not know the GDP of Illinois is over $1 trillion. I'm proud to say that if we were an independent country, we're the 5th largest economy in the United States, but if we were an independent country, we'd be the 18th or 19th largest economy in the world, and which makes us potentially a member of the G20. So if the elections don't go well this year in the United States, you may be seeing us at G20. Just kidding, of course.
Wait, because in Quebec, when we talk about that,
yes, I know. Yeah. And remember, I'm from the land of Lincoln, so he brought the country together.
Yes, right.
And so anyway, let me talk about very recently the relationship of supply chain across electric vehicle manufacturing. This is not something that Illinois was particularly known for. We didn't have much going on in electric vehicles a few years ago. We had one company that came as a startup to Illinois and bought an empty Mitsubishi auto factory in Normal, Illinois, about the center of our state. And nobody had ever heard of it. It's a company called Rivian. And when it showed up, there were no employees, at least not in Normal. And today there are about 10,000 employees. And of course, that started us in the industry. Then we created incentives and really focused on the supply chain and other auto manufacturers. So now we have a new battery company that's come 2,600 jobs and $2 billion of investment. We have Stellantis that is retooling an old ICE vehicle facility to become an electric vehicle facility, also building a battery manufacturer right next door to it. I mention this because many of the components of the cells, as well as the battery itself, are actually coming from across the border here in Canada. And there are so many industries really that I could go through, but I want you to know, we don't think about the border between our two countries in Chicago. That is in a good way. We don't view it as a far reach to simply do business with Quebec or with Ontario any different than we would with Indiana or Missouri or Ohio or other states in the United States. I think that's good for both of us that we think that way, and I think we need to make it even stronger, that relationship, so that, when we talk about USMCA, for example, which we'll face in 2026, that should be part of the discussion. That, if you think about the regions of the world and what's happening in a geopolitical sense across the globe, we all are safer and more economically successful if we draw those ties closer together.
Absolutely. So it sounds listening to you and listening to the trade relationship that we have beyond the goods and the supply chain, it's the relationship. And it sounds like it's a Harvard Business Review best-in-class case study. So let's learn from that case study. What's in that relationship that makes it so successful? What are the ingredients or even just an anecdote that you say, this represents how the relationship is going from a trading?
Well, I guess I'm going to go a little parallel to that question and just say, so back in 2010, I was trying to put together, we have a great technology ecosystem in Chicago, and I was in the technology investment business as well as manufacturing. And I believed strongly that we needed to replicate what you all have created both here in Quebec and in Ontario in terms of incubators for young companies. We didn't really have much of that in the city of Chicago. So I got on a plane, went to see Mars, and interviewed as many people as I could, talked to people at the universities, both here and there, to figure out what are the relationships, and then imported that. And I used that I imported that, and we created something called 1871. I'll just say as a side note that 1871 is perhaps for some people an odd year to pick to name something because it's the year of the Great Chicago Fire. And so you might think, well, when you're talking about startups, you don't want to talk about things going up in smoke. So 1871, though, was the beginning of an entrepreneurial period in Chicago that's really unparalleled anywhere else. For about 22 years, every entrepreneur in the country was coming to Chicago to build a new company. Many of those companies you may know the names of. The parallel today is that we now have cross-border relationships on quantum computing that are quite important for the future of the world, not just the future of our relationship. But I wanted to draw that parallel or draw that story out because that is an example of how we draw our two countries even closer together. That is our universities, University of Chicago, the Northwestern University, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, are three of the great research institutions, all of which have relationships with all of your greatest universities. And much of it is around the development of AI and quantum. And once again, for national security reasons and others, that I think is a hugely important component of what will be an even stronger international relationship.
Yeah, and it's important because that is all based on trust, specifically when you talk about AI and data and information sharing. So clearly you were able to build that trusting relationship with Canada. And clearly everybody in the world, as you said, is going to benefit from it.
But it's because of, we talk about, when you live in Illinois, we talk about Midwest nice. And people sometimes say on the coast, that they're cutthroat on the coast. But if you come to Illinois or you come to Iowa or Wisconsin, that we're Midwest nice. You are Midwest nice throughout the entire country of Canada.
That's correct.
And it's, I do think there's a common set of values. I'm not suggesting it doesn't exist for the entire United States, but I am suggesting that you feel it when you arrive here in Montreal and in Toronto and really everywhere else that I have been in Canada, that there is a genuine desire for people to reach out and get to know you. And this is in the business environment as well as the government. And I don't think it's a put on or an act by anyone here, nor is it from anyone in Illinois. We live and breathe and succeed based upon relationships and the sharing of ideas and trust. Now, if you cross us, you'll feel it. But but Midwest nice really does exist, and I think it exists.
I don't know if you'll agree. We're nice like 11 months out of 12. February, not the greatest time to, right? It gets cold and windy, and
it's no longer. No. Chicago is no longer cold in the winter, so just come visit. We'll show you. No, I'm kidding. So maybe climate change is helping us. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Good segue, because I wanted to talk about climate. I don't want to talk about climate change per se, but the introduction by Neil was very elegant, and thank you for that. I joined Bombardier 3 years ago. I am not an aviation specialist, although now I've become quite an aviation enthusiast. And I remember when I got the call from Éric Martel, our CEO, and then Pierre Baudouin, they said, do you want to come and work for this company? And of course, Bombardier is an iconic Canadian company. It's 75% exports. It's good to the US. So as a Montrealer, what an opportunity. But I did have one aviation, business aviation, sustainability. So I did my research before I accepted the job, specifically that I'm the chief communication and marketing officer. I knew I was going to be on stage worldwide talking about the company. It's actually in the introduction amazing what business aviation and aviation as an industry has been able to do in terms of sustainability in such a short time. And I was reading your bio, and just quickly in the hallway, I said, can we talk about sustainable aviation fuel? And I don't know if everybody knows about sustainable aviation fuel. So just quickly, it exists. We use it. Bombardier was the first OEM to ever publicly say that we actually load all of our demo flights and all of our production flights with as much sustainable aviation fuel as legally possible. The problem is, it's very hard for us to get it. We don't produce it in Canada. So when you want to fill the tanks with sustainable aviation fuel, you have to import it from Finland or from California, which kind of defeats the purpose. So what we're doing now, it's called book and claim. I don't know if you know about the book and claim system. So let's say we have a jet leaving Montreal to go to Miami. We'll look at how much sustainable aviation fuel is needed, but we'll put it in a plane that sits in California or near Finland where sustainable aviation is available. So it's not going in our plane, it's going into another plane, but it's offset. It would be much better to get sustainable aviation fuel from Illinois. And you said, Ev, we sit with corn. And that's what we need for sustainable. So talk to us about sustainable and that vision of ours of potentially partnering on that.
Well, good news, as you may know, that Illinois has created sustainable aviation fuel incentives, tax credits. United Airlines has been a proponent of this and really encouraged the creation of it, and is a user of sustainable aviation fuel. But importantly, if you come to Illinois, at least when you get outside of Chicago, you'll find that 75% of our land mass in Illinois is farmland. We're the number 2 producer of corn. We're the number 1 producer of soybeans in Illinois. It's not something that you know if you don't leave Chicago, but it's an important industry to us. And the sustainable aviation fuel industry began to sort of attach itself to the state. And then we took advantage, recognizing that this was an opportunity to create these incentives. And now we just hosted a first sustainable aviation fuel conference. We had hundreds of people there, including not only the producers and the potential producers, because as you know, there's not enough of it being produced, but they are looking at Illinois as a place to plant themselves. And we had the customers on hand at that very same conference. So we're excited about this as an industry for Illinois. We get that it's going to take some time before sustainable aviation fuel is affordable and a regular part of every airline and every aviator's thinking. But we are at the forefront of it in Illinois.
So you have a client. As soon as you have it, we'll take it.
Very good. Trust me, we are on the verge. I'm very excited about it.
Fantastic. Okay, so you also have very aggressive, but in a positive way, targets, right, for sustainability. So 0 emission by 2045. 100% clean energy by 2050. And my favorite one, 1 million passengers in electric vehicles by 2030.
Yes.
Can you share in 8 minutes or less how you're going to do that?
Wow. First of all, this is a very challenging thing to do in what's considered an industrial state in the center of the country. But we are a leader in the country, even as compared to coastal states that have, that have been ahead of us from a time perspective. But the bill that we put together, the law that is now on the books called the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, sort of implies to you what we were aiming at, which is not just about sustainability, but also making sure that as we remake the energy industry, in a sustainable fashion, focused on climate action, we are including and building it around a diverse set of owners of businesses in the energy business, as well as people working in the industry. And that means you've got to go after training. You've got to make capital available. There's a lot to do to make sure that you've got a diverse set of operators and providers. But that was an important component of what we did. Now, you're talking about the actual goals that we set, and it took us a year and a half of work groups in our legislature and the various advocates, as well as my governor's office leading to try to come up with how are we going to accomplish these things and what can we write into law that we can actually accomplish. And just getting the bill passed, just to be clear, not an easy endeavor. And I don't take lightly anybody that's been an advocate and gone to work with legislatures, parliaments, et cetera, to move policy in this way. It is slow. It is work that requires a meticulous focus, and we touched everything. Now, remember, I want to give you a picture of Illinois. We, in our energy industry in particular, 53% of our electricity is produced by nuclear. That's more than any other state. We have 6 nuclear power plants. Years ago, people decided in Illinois, that's enough. We don't want any more nuclear. It's dangerous. Maybe we'll let other states do it, or maybe we'll just oppose anymore. So they passed a moratorium on nuclear. We just removed that nuclear moratorium last year, and if you talk to people in the environmental advocacy world, you'll find that no longer is there I think all of you know this, no longer is there a universal opposition. In fact, if you want to have clean energy and you want to, get to the end of the use of fossil fuels in energy production, it requires nuclear. But we also incentivized everything else, solar, wind. We don't have hydro like you do, but in Illinois anyway. So, we succeeded, I think, in setting goals, and very importantly, I guess I'll give you a progress report because it takes a lot of years to meet these goals. I think coal in general, it's not as if you have to push it off a cliff. It's expensive to operate, and coal plants are closing without any deadlines being set. We set some deadlines. So just putting that aside for a moment, because coal is still a part of what we do in Illinois. I said 53% nuclear. I didn't say when I started, we were at 7.5% renewable. And then you can imagine, natural gas and coal taking up the rest. Our goal, obviously, is to have renewable take up the rest. So but just since 2021, and really in 2.5 years, because the measurements haven't really been made yet in 24, we have achieved a doubling of the amount of renewable from 7.5% to 15%. And I believe we'll get into a two handle, 20 something before when we're in 2025. So that's one measure of progress. Another is that we are training people for this industry and building solar, less so wind than solar right now, but we are building both with people who've never been in this industry before. And I think that's an important component of success, for our future. Everybody needs to be part of this industry that we're really creating, or at least we're retooling. And
I hear you talk about the ecosystem and the tech companies and the talent and the engineers. And what about the population? Are they, when it exists, all the infrastructure you need for that 1 million electric vehicles, do you feel like the population is going to follow?
Well, are you asking whether they're going to buy electric vehicles?
Yes.
Well, I think the thing there are a variety of things holding back the industry. It's still growing. I think, people who want to see the doom and, end of the electric vehicle industry, and there are, at least in my country, there are people who would like to see it go away, not just the ICE vehicle manufacturers, but others for political reasons, which I haven't been able to figure out. But the success that we're having, the growth of that industry is being held back by two things, as you may know. One is the cost of electric vehicles still too high, though it's coming down. But this is like every technology that's ever been invented. And so it's coming down slowly but surely, and we see it even at Rivian, but certainly at Tesla and others. And eventually it will be much more affordable for an average working class family. We're not there yet. So that's something that's, there were people who could afford it and they're first adopters and so on. And that's great. I own an electric vehicle, a Rivian, I might add. But that's one thing that's holding the industry back. But another thing is charging stations. You're way better at this here, as far as I can tell, just driving around town than we are. We really have to make a concerted effort, and maybe we should look back and see how you did it. But we are focused on, and Joe Biden, I have to give him credit, recognized that we needed incentives and, grants and help to get it done. But it's working. We're building charging stations up and down all of our highways, and, it's starting to move into the center of the city. We don't yet have charging stations really like on sidewalks the way that you do. I'm envious of that. I think that will be the future. But right now we've got people who are putting them in their own garages for personal use, but we need lots of public charging, and we've got a long way to go, but we are adding thousands of charging stations all the time. And I get a report. We have somebody who's in charge of just that job, and I get a report regularly from her. We're getting there, but those are things that are holding us back, at least in Illinois. And I'm confident that we'll get there. But as far as the million, we're at about, 88,000 or something like that, electric vehicles on the road. I'm looking at my commerce director. Is that about right? 88,000. But it's, you can see the acceleration. Yeah. So people who are like, well, you'll never get there. You're only at 88,000. How can you get to 1 million by 2030? It's going to happen because there are going to be hundreds of thousands that will get sold each year over the succeeding years.
And Madeleine and Jean-François, you heard the call to action. We're here to help. So glad we inspired you for the charging station, and we're here to help.
Indeed. So, and by the way, one of your great electric vehicle companies also moved to Illinois, or at least opened up a facility in Illinois, and it's from right here in Quebec, and that's Lion Electric. They're in Joliet, Illinois. We're very proud to host them there. We're working with them on making sure that our schools are electrifying their school buses, and that Lion is a featured provider for them.
We're very proud. So we also have a parts depot, Bombardier. I don't know if you knew that. Our entire parts depot is in Chicago, Illinois, and we have over 400 employees there. So next time I go see them, I'll come and see you. So closing words, Governor. So I just want to say thank you so much. It is true what my colleagues said in Washington. Not only are you engaging, but we heard about sustainability, we heard about diversity, we heard about women, we heard about students, we heard about collaboration and trust, all that in less than 25 minutes. So thank you. I want to ask one last question. You came to Montreal, you saw our stations for electrifying cars, you talked about Lion Electric. When we go next to Illinois, where do you want us to go to get inspired in Illinois?
Well, first, don't forget about the best pizza in the world is Chicago pizza.
I'm going to do like Oprah, and everybody gets one.
Yeah. And you get a new pizza, and you get a new pizza. No, but we are, from a tourism perspective, open for business. We want to see all of you. There is no place to be in the United States that has a better summer than the city of Chicago. We have festivals all the time, and you'll enjoy all that. So that's one thing I would point out. But from a business perspective, I just want you all to know that, and I talked about the size of our economy, but we have Chicago is the third largest home to Fortune 500 companies in the United States. And so there are so many companies to point you to, Motorola Solutions, depends on what you're looking for, right? McDonald's, United Airlines, I mentioned them, but we are home to a whole bunch of life sciences companies, tech companies, and there's a plethora of folks to meet and get to know. And by the way, BMO is headquartered, at least in the United States, in Chicago, and we're very proud to have them there. There are like a hometown bank for us in Chicago. So there's a lot to offer, and I hope all of you will take the opportunity to come see us and learn more about what we have to offer, because I guarantee you we're an industrial state that is also high technology focused, and so there's opportunity for everybody to, I think, grow our businesses together.
Let's go learn about quantum in Chicago.
There you go.
Merci beaucoup, Gouverneur. Merci.